to 2022. Welcome to February and welcome to the damn double shot with James and Alex Fitzgerald. That's right, we're still here. We're not going anywhere. Looking good, cuz. Still tanned. Actually, a little bit. You don't tan as much as me, but that's okay.
No, and good to see you've still retained yours. Mind you, you pretty much spent the whole of January in Queensland, I think. Geez, I tell you what, if I should have listened to our last episode before the break in Christmas, but geez, it feels like a lot's happened in 6 weeks. We've now got tens of thousands of cases a day up here in Queensland. The Aussie Open's over.
You've seen my T-shirt. What does it say? Not
No more
talking
COVID.
about the virus anymore. I'm gonna start
COVID's been
wearing it
left
every
in
Tuesday.
2021. Hey, you're back in Melbourne, and what a weekend to get down there. There was a lot going on down in Melbourne over the weekend. All awesome stuff. Fill us in. What was the vibe like?
Oh, when I tell you the vibes were nothing short of immaculate, you better believe it. Why? Well, we had the Australian Open, so we do love a sporting event. We are partial to one down here, which was good. Especially though Melbourne, it's been a little bit depressing. So we not only had the Australian Open and it went ahead, but we had Ash Barty win, first Aussie in 44 years. Huge. Heard you went to sleep in the third set.
No, that was in the Nadal one. The Nadal one, that went 5.5 hours though. No, I saw the Ash Barty one. That was fantastic. Then the doubles with Kokkinakis and Kyrgios. Dylan Olcott saw his match, Australian of the Year. Unfortunately lost, but he seems like a good fella.
He does.
Look, I think I'll tell you what, sport has the ability to positively shift the mood like nothing else, and it felt like we needed it a little bit going into the weekend. It's been a pretty chaotic start to the year. I'm going to say there's probably been more negative headlines than positive ones in the newspapers, which probably isn't a change for the last 2 years. But no, it feels like people came in on Monday and went, well, that's the end of January, and also that's the end of the negativity. Positivity here on.
Look, I mean, you probably travel in the wrong circles, cuz, but there are national champions and then there are more localised champions. And I myself fall into the latter, the localised champion, because I am the 2021 localised champion. I'm up there with Ash Barty of the Monopoly Deal Championships. For those of you who don't know, Monopoly Deal is the card game of Monopoly. It came out, I feel like 6 or 7 months ago, and we smashed it over Christmas because there were 7 of us all bundled into a house. The weather wasn't great in Queensland. Few of us got the COVIDs. So we were playing like it was going out of fashion, and your girl here, champion, absolute champion.
You've had a good run. And you've introduced me the game. I haven't managed to figure it out just yet. I think the missing piece was to get the Monopoly money involved.
You need a mentor, cuz. You need a mentor. I'll fly up soon. We'll figure it out.
And I'll tell you what, too. You're like the Teflon of this virus, too. You go
unbreakable.
People. You go, everywhere you go, it just doesn't seem to be able to stick on you. You've just been dodging it for the best part of 3 months, haven't you?
I have, and I don't really know. When you said Teflon, I just thought of this funny scene in Napoleon Dynamite where Uncle Rico he's showing this woman how strong the Teflon is, the Tupperware, and he runs over it and it bursts everywhere. So I'm flattered. Thank you. I'm flattered that you think I'm Teflon. Did you binge anything over the Christmas holidays? Cuz a few fairy books. I don't know. Did you watch Harry Potter again? Like, let us into what you binge with Hannah and your wife.
I've finished the fairy book series, unfortunately. But I binged 2 things. Number one was a book called Creativity Inc., which written by a guy who started Pixar with Steve Jobs.
Ooh.
And that was fascinating because it gave a little bit of an insight into the sort of the beginnings of animation and kid movies. And then they picked it up in the 1990s with Toy Story, A Bug's Life, and then in more recent years, Frozen and others when they merged with Disney. So it's an awesome book, really motivating, but also just interesting to see all these classics that I saw as a kid and to understand how they literally changed the way that animation was done. So that was cool. And then Hannah and I just finished Stay Close on Netflix, which is a bit of a whodunit series on Netflix there, and that was fantastic. Looking for another one though now. What do you got for me?
I'm actually going to hit you up with something random. It's on SBS. It's called Alone. It's a reality TV series where 10 men and or women get dropped into the wilderness and they've got to survive. And it's amazing because they're completely alone. So these are like career survivalists. And I won't give too much away, but they're literally there for minimum like 60 days, like so 2 months or 3 months. It's unbelievable. And they've got a camera and whatever, and they're sort of like filming themselves kill animals and basically survive, make shelters. It's fascinating. A little bit of a switch to the normal reality TV series that I'm accustomed to, which is absolute trash. So that is Alone on SBS. But we did actually create a little bit of television content ourselves last week. We had the great man, Tim Lawless, head of research at RP Data, probably the most, and CoreLogic, probably the most respected real estate data conglomerate in Australia. He is fascinating, isn't he? Like, he's just a good bloke. He came on to our webinar and he had parted way with some amazing reflections on 2021 in the real estate data world, and also a few light predictions for 2022, although he's a conservative guy, so he's light on predictions, isn't he? What did you think?
Well, he's fantastic because he explains it so simply. Like, there's probably spreadsheet upon spreadsheet, I imagine, of stuff that sits behind the background. He gave a good recap on what happened last year, and it surprised me that the weakest market apparently was Melbourne because it was locked down for half the year. Still, the house price grew by just under 20%. So that was really interesting. He had a great perspective on rents as well. Really bullish on rents on the whole. And I know your favourite takeaway, so I'll let you deal to this. But the value of housing, wow, that was a bit of an eye opener.
Huge. So he said, and this actually shocked me because I wasn't sure if they'd released a report about it yet or not. And God, I love reports. But that was a joke. He said at the end of 2021, housing as an asset class in Australia hit 9.6 trillion. Now, to just give that some context, we went nuts over this last year because in May we hit 8 trillion and we were like, whoa, this is amazing. This is like we're going through an anomaly period right now. Then come October, we'd hit 9 trillion. So in 5 months, our housing prices had increased by $1 trillion. So then some 2 and a bit months later, we hit 9.6 trillion. It was huge. So what's going to happen this year? I don't know. But some amazing things. He talked about the flow-on effect of the domestic borders. We sort of forget about those and we keep talking about international, but we're going to benefit twice this year. That'll be domestic borders opening and staying open, and then,
Fingers
of course,
crossed.
the international thereafter.
Fingers crossed on the domestic one. We're still missing one border. There's still one border that's shut.
The People's Republic of Western Australia.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Look, I know you're a safe guy, and this is a safe space. It's just you, me, and everyone that listens to the podcast, and producer Nick, of course. But let's just put it out there. We're not gamblers or anything like that, but let's just put it out there. Your rental growth, friendly bet. What you think rental growth will do this year as a percentage? Just give me the number. I don't want your dossier. And then national median house price growth. Where do you think we're going to end the year? And we'll revisit come December. A little disclosure, James and I are not analysts. This is all fun and games. Yeah, that's the disclosure.
Well, because nearly half of all Australian housing is in Sydney, it has a bigger impact.
Ooh.
So as a result, I'm going to say 6 or 7%. I'll go 6.5.
The house price for national median house price?
National median house price. I think some markets will grow by 10, but that's another podcast. Rental growth, I reckon they grew by about nearly 10% last year. So I'm going to say maybe 4% this year for the same reason that Sydney will have a big impact.
Okay. Safe, Suzanne. You want to hear my bets? Let's just spice it up a little, I think
Here we go.
national median house price, let's just say 12%. It's a nice number, slightly above 10. I'll lock it. And then rental growth, I'm thinking that we still got 5% in there somewhere. And look, you're quite right. Others will benefit more than some of those big cities that maybe have sort of topped out a bit. But we're going to see the flow into that affordable lifestyle, livability type market. So very exciting. We will revisit, and producer Nick, if you can just put a little tab on that, and we'll see who wins the prize at the end of the year, whatever the prize is.
By the way, I hope no one's going out and making big bets based on that, because that is a guess on both our parts. You would have better odds at picking a horse in the next one at Flemington, I reckon.
Quick, we'll get the legal counsel to just draft a few things before we put this on air.
Hey, by the way, we'll take a break, but SBS, they've got a lot of shows coming out
Great
lately.
shows.
What has happened there? There's been like a renaissance of the SBS content.
A renaissance.
All right, so Alex, you had a bee in your bonnet at the back end of last year about a little technicality in the Queensland conveyancing system where if you buy a house, miss your settlement date, the vendor can cancel the contract. There was headlines created, people losing money. It was unfair, and the Queensland government has acted.
Wouldn't say I had a bee in my bonnet, but it's very interesting. I mean, I'm based down here in Victoria and do a lot of stuff in South Australia and to a degree New South Wales way back when. But, if you fail to settle in those three states, you've got like a 5 to 14-day grace period. And sometimes, with banks, when they're totally overrun, they've got crazy business, crazy calls, they're going slow. It's not even your fault if you don't rock up to settlement. So Queensland, you hadn't quite sorted things out. So we saw heaps of headlines where we had this sudden death settlement saga where people, to their bank's failure, didn't settle on the date of settlement. Basically, the vendor or the seller of the property said, see you later, I'm taking your deposit and I'm now going to go sell it for a bit more money. So it's obviously all come to a head in a very hot market. Now, what's apparently happened with the insistence of probably a lot of media and the REIQ, Real Estate Institute of Queensland, they've basically now got, or they've approved a 5-day settlement extension. So essentially, if you're meant to settle on the 1st of February and for whatever reason Westpac stuffs you around or they just, paperwork or whatever because they've got a lot going on, you can request a 5-day extension on the day that you're meant to settle, and it basically cannot be declined. So you've got another 5 days to go and sort it out. So this is really important in a hot market because there are situations where, settlements since purchase to settlement has been a couple of months, and we've seen a hot market where you can get a couple of $100,000 more. So it's more enticing for vendors to take the money and run.
Bit harsh to single out Westpac there. Got a bit of an issue with Westpac, have you?
Westpac, obviously you're listening, and it's nothing against you. Please take me back. No, I just the big news media headline was a story about a couple unfortunately were let down by Westpac. So that's just fresh in my mind. Sorry.
So we'll actually be doing quick shot rather soon, where we've got some questions, and there's been a few that came in from people who are still in the market trying to buy. I guess, what are your tips then for people who are trying to buy? How do you avoid this thing, and what does the 5-day grace period now mean in terms of, the mechanics of it?
I mean, you've really got to be as prepared as you possibly can before you're going to buy. A lot of people are buying at auction at the moment because it is a hot market. So hopefully you've engaged the broker, you've got your pre-approval, and he's got all the numbers and paperwork, and he's ahead. I mean, that's really all that you can do. Be as prepared as possible before you purchase, and then turn those documents around as quick as you can. But really, a broker is the game changer, and they can a lot of the time be the difference. Because some of them, they've got a bit more higher rankings with the banks and whatnot. But I've always found brokers better and more efficient in my experience. We can only speak in our own experience than dealing directly with a bank. But
I think most pre-approvals expire after 90 days too. So just keep a tab on that. That's caught a few people out in the past.
Did you want to add anything to the little Q&A that you just threw?
I tell you what I do want to. Tell you what I do want to add to though is we capped off last year and said the race is on to $1 million. It was between Canberra and Melbourne, and we have a winner. We have a winner. Now, drum roll, please.
That's a drum roll. That's a drum roll.
The good news is, in fact, the amazing part is, both of them today sit at more than $1 million. But when the December numbers came out, at the end of last year, Canberra was $1.015 million, whereas Melbourne had not quite hit $1 million. It was 997 back then. The January figures have come out. It's now 1,000,002. So Melbourne got there, but Canberra was the winner of the race.
We
Applause.
bloody
We got
got
applause
there.
sound effects, surely. Did that up. I'm sure the sound guy can feed that.
Golf claps.
We got a sound
'Cause we're
guy?
very
Anyway, we'll figure it
sophisticated. Amazing. There you go. Canberra's a little dark horse, isn't it? I wish I knew more about it, but Melbourne's the much larger city, so you would have thought that we'd get there. But I guess
Hey, don't take
smaller,
it personally.
a bit more
Jeez.
concentrated.
Don't take it personally. No need to deflect. Hey,
Why?
Hey. Also, there was a absolute rush of deals that got announced in the Christmas break and the first couple of weeks of January. So I thought we might talk some deals. We love deals. This is we've actually got quite a few to choose from because I'm sure they didn't all happen right at the death, but they all seem to make their way into the newspapers. We'll start with one in Brookfield, an area near Melton in the west of Melbourne there. Guy who owned the Melbourne Cup winning horse, guy by the name of Aussie, who owns a Melbourne Cup winning horse. How good. He paid $12 million late last year for a 12-hectare site in Brookfield, and which is in the west there. So that's about $1 million a hectare. I don't know how many blocks you get out of that, but Brookfield.
I was going to ask you. Was it like 30? Is it 30 blocks a hectare, or am I
normally about 20? Normally about 20, so 240 blocks. Yeah,
okay.
240 blocks, not bad. About 50 grand a block.
Aussie's clearly going to be my new best friend, so I better give him a call after we record this one. And then
sorry, I was just going to say the guy who sold it, by the way, did very well. He paid $740,000 in 2006, and he sold it for $12 million. Not a bad little earn.
That's actually, normally when you're looking at those prices, you're talking in the 90s, aren't you? Well, I mean, in terms of price growth, you're probably not going to pay $740,000 in the 90s, but that's actually very good. It's very good. What is that, 15 years, 16 years?
Yeah, a bit of luck. And then there's a mob. You would know these guys. I've not heard of them. SIG Group. They've bought 2 or 3 things down in Melbourne there. Seem to have a big appetite to go and get some land down in Melbourne. So talk us through those. They're also seemingly in the west.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's not a whole heap to go into detail with, but basically it's looking like a big master plan community, 2,300 housing blocks, which is very exciting in Tarney, which is the west. We've done quite a lot of stuff there since about 2007, so that was going to be firing off. But your brother-in-law, James, actually brought to my attention they're building the big new football stadium out there in the coming years, which will bring in jobs locally. So it'll be close to that housing as well, which is going to be amazing.
Western United.
15,000 seat stadium out there. I love the West. Still love the West. Would love to be doing more stuff out there and getting our clients out there. Sort of, it's a bit industrial, very blue collar. I think it's had a bad stigma still for quite some time. But look at all these guys still buying out here. Like, there's a lot of gas, and we're about 25 Ks from the CBD. So these deals are ones that I quite like.
Nice. I was going to say, don't you call yourself the Queen of the North? Shouldn't you be like anti the West?
Well, someone else called me the Queen of the North, and then I just sort of picked it up and ran with it. But I was dabbling a lot in the northern growth corridor, clang, of Victoria for quite some time. But then when we went over to Adelaide, I was also in the northern growth corridor, clang. So Queen of the North, but it's whatever. Queen of Dirt, that's fine as well.
For those of you playing along at home, wondering why we keep saying clang, we got, I'm going to say it was actually not a bad review, particularly compared to Dan the Milkshake Man, but our references to Growth Corridor was something that someone took issue with. So we're just going to clang every time that we say Growth Corridor, clang. And then in the north, so this is where I was going with it. Then in the north, in Greenvale and Wallet, we've got a mob called Jinding. So they've been very active. I believe they're Chinese based. Obviously, they've got offices in Australia. But they've paid $130 million for 2 blocks. One's 57 hectares in Greenvale, where they've paid $87 million. Big Kanga. for 425 lots. That's 200,000 per lot before you've even built a road. Gee whiz. Big Dog will be happy. Big Dog, if you're listening, he lives in Greenvale. Big Dog from Greenvale will be very happy with that one. And Wallert, also in the north. This one, a smaller one, 28 hectares, $43.5 million. Again, big money, 250 lots. And nearly $200,000 there as well, about 175,000. So it's a lot when that's just the raw land. Before you've paid any government contributions, before you've built anything, you know, they're going to be retailing somewhere in the threes, maybe even the late threes, just to cover the costs and make a bit of money.
Insane. Now, we've given a lot of attention to Victoria, Cuz, but up in Queensland, we've got a 70% land shortage, and everyone's feeling the pinch up there, trying to buy, seeing growth, seeing rental growth, people trying to get rentals. Any deals going on up there?
Just one. One solitary deal. Unfortunately, it's been a bit dry, but Fraser's, they're a big publicly listed company. They've bought like a massive site, 250 hectares. That is a lot of land. That's in the Flagstone Priority Development area, big, fast-growing area. Got a few friends, actually, that have moved out that way. They've paid $80 million for 250 hectares, so seems pretty cheap compared to some of those ones we've just referenced in Melbourne. They bought it off Pete, another publicly listed company, so I'm not sure why they've sold, publicly listed companies, I guess. But, just the one deal in Queensland. So we'll keep an eye out for maybe some more over the next few weeks, see if we can even the ledger. But Melbourne's seemingly the most active place for deals at the back end of last year.
I love it. Well, there is absolutely no doubt that jobs and, of course, the unemployment rate will remain very topical throughout 2022, and it's looking very positive. So speaking of starting the year on a positive note, I would say this certainly is, because where we finished on jobs last year, and, of course, where that puts us to kick off this year, 2022.
Absolutely. In fact, I think I put this note in, must have been around Christmas time, because the November job data came out and said we'd hit 4.6% unemployment, something they weren't forecasting to happen until the middle of 2022. Since then, the December numbers have come out and we're at 4.2%. So we're miles ahead of where we thought we would be. Created nearly half a million jobs over the November-December period, which is huge. And they are thinking that it might even be in the high threes at the end of January because of all of the shortage of supplies. So I don't know if you've sort of seen, but a lot of people who've been getting COVID or isolating. I don't know we said no COVID, but it has to be referenced in this context. Because there's a lot of people that are not able to work, and we're actually short on people to fill the jobs. I don't know if you've noticed, but at the ground level, it is most noticeable in Coles or Woolies today. If you go in, there is either an absence of fruit, veg stock because they can't get the truck drivers out on the roads quickly enough, or the shelf packers are a little bit behind.
Yeah.
So we're feeling it. It's positive, albeit it's a little bit artificial because I don't know that all those jobs will remain for the whole of the year. But, hey, we'll take the positive news to kickstart us for the year for sure.
Absolutely. And just on the topic of some interesting jobs that I think we did a segment in the middle of last year of like new jobs that are emerging as technology does. But there was a big article about air taxis being on their way, which is like pretty amazing. I think they're talking about this here in Melbourne, but basically the flat rooftops of the inner city and the CBD car parks could become takeoff and landing sites for apparently hundreds of daily air taxis, or I'd probably say air Ubers, because Uber are a bit more progressive there. Now that could make way for some pretty interesting jobs, cuz.
Absolutely. And Victoria, your home state, is the pioneer. It's where they're starting this whole little quest. And what they're sort of introducing is they're just starting to run it through the legal system because it's got to be legalised. But it's being led by a mob called Skyports, and they've partnered up with, secure parking. I'm pretty sure everyone knows secure parking.
Yeah,
they charge like wounded bulls, and pretty much the only place you can get a car park in any CBD in Australia.
That's right.
In any event, they have found 400 potential places on top of those secure car parking places in Melbourne that they're going to identify for air taxis. So they're going to have either taxis that can move people or drones that can move goods from warehouses into the city and then distribute them from there. And they think that it could be 2 to 3 years before we're seeing the first ones flying and 400 of them in the air, which is not a long time when you think about the complexities involved in getting something like that off the ground.
Well, it's interesting that the Amazon were talking about doing like 3 or 4 hour delivery from when you buy something on Amazon and you get it drone delivered to you. So that could be first before we see the likes of air taxis and people getting around. What I find interesting, and I won't spend too much time on it, but the broader discussion of then less tolls being paid. Obviously, it's not going to be dramatic change, but less tolls, and the government makes money out of fuel, and us, not you, obviously, because you're a electric driver, but I'm not. I'm still a octane head. So very interesting. Like they're going to make less money on that as we bring in electric. So how is the government going to make the moolah? That's going to be what they got to figure out before they pump it up. That's all I'm going to say there.
Well, and by the way, I actually do get charged in my rego that came recently. I copped an extra $100 as a
You're joking.
Electricity surcharge.
You should have.
Zero sympathy.
That.
Zero sympathy. No, I do wonder what it'll. Anyway, it's a topic for another day, but it could have profound effects on the way that we use offices and homes. If you can get air taxis, it's a bit of a game changer. Because I don't know about you, but a little bit fatigued. There was a lot to cover in the first one back, and I'm not used to it.
I'm not podcast fit, Kaz. I am not podcast fit. So let's hang up the boots. We've got a episode of Quick Shots as usual. And hopefully we'll be doing a couple of cool things this year throughout our social media, namely our Instagram. So keep an eye on all of that. We hope to see you guys throughout 2022.
I think, too, you can go to producer Nick confirming. You can go to custodian.com.au if you want to see that Tim Lawless, the full interview that we referenced at the start there. You can watch it probably on replay because it goes live Tuesday and Thursday. Most people will listen after that. But anyway, you'll get the replay, guys. Welcome to 2022, hey?
Yeah, baby.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Double Shot with your favourite cousins, Alex and James Fitzgerald. If you've got a burning question or something we absolutely need to talk about on the pod, please write to us. Both of our emails are in the show notes. For little real estate tidbits and a little bit of banter, a lot of banter, you can follow us on the gram. Our handle is thedoubleshot.podcast. That, my friends, is thedoubleshot.podcast. Until next time, think of us when you sit back and sip your next double shot.